Good morning, everyone. Good day. Greetings, whenever, wherever you are. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. So, quick astro alert. And when I say quick, you know how it goes with me. I gotta weave every single data point into what I'm explaining. I can't help it. It's just part of the Sag nature. So, the reason I want to come on here today is that even though we briefly talked about today, Thursday the 30th, in terms of the astrology, we briefly talked about it in Monday's broadcast. I just did the astrology report for the Starseed Fellowship, the monthly membership folks, and they got a much more direct read on today's astrology. But as I was going through it today as part of my preparation for my work day, as I usually do, I get very deep into the day's transits and allow that to really guide and provide a focal point for how I'm going to be approaching the day. It became really clear that there's going to be most likely, so I'm not predicting, I don't predict things, at best I'm forecasting, but really what I'm doing is I'm a purveyor of puzzle pieces. I'm a purveyor of dots that you can then weave and connect yourself in order to understand your experience, your subjective experience in these objective in this objective world with these objective data points, which is the astrological transit. So it became pretty clear to me that there's going to be this demarcation point today as we move through the beginning of the day and the moon finishes the transit of the sign of Cancer, which is her home territory. So the sensitivity, the intuition, our internal access to our deep power, our feelings and sensitivity to home and family and loved ones and all of the vulnerability within ourselves and what protects us, right? The fourth house in Cancer is the womb that protects our inner vulnerability. And that does translate to your marriage, your home and family, to your family of origin, to your clan, right? To a tribal identity of some sort, and also your personal power, your root system, what stabilizes you in your feelings, your emotions in the world around you. When the shit hits the fan, what is stabilizing you? Well, it's your root system, just like a plant is stabilized to the world around it through the root system, just like this tree in the flyer for the vernal equinox forecast is rooted. And so as the windstorm that came through my territory last night, as it swept down from New York across Pennsylvania, the trees were all over the place. And yeah, some branches came off and hit the house, and there was a lot of damage in some ways, but the root system is what kept those trees from completely being blown away in their entirety. And so there are specific transits that are very strong, that are reaching their exactitude today, and all at the same time, while the moon is at the very last degrees of Cancer. And when you get to these last degrees of a sign, you reach this mastery of it. It all culminates into the fullness of what that sign represents. And so I'm going to kind of go through this play by play. And for those of you who already got the weekly astrology, because you're part of the membership group, then you already know what's coming. And this is just an addendum, right? This is just an added extra bit here. So the other thing I want to offer is to let you know that we do have a full moon coming next week. I'm going to be doing the Libra full moon forecast here soon and provide it onto these platforms. But I'm keeping this seasonal forecast sale available until at least the full moon, the sale rate for the vernal equinox seasonal forecast, to look at what to expect up to the solstice, because there is going to be a bit of a reprieve, but we're not there quite yet. We're going to have to finish out this lunar cycle and get to the solar eclipse on April 20th before I think things really start to settle. So the next 2.5 weeks or so are still going to be pretty intense. And the full moon that's coming is really going to be a revelation for all of us. Do we have the calmness in our inner self, our peace Is it there? Have we been intentionally creating the structures that will allow for that as the winds of change are blowing all around us? So this is something that's available on my website. Everything's linked in the description box. I just wanted to let you know in case you are interested in being like, okay, I really want to know what to expect, and how are these major transits over the next couple of months going to impact my personal architecture, soul architecture of astrology. So let me go into the play-by-play here, because it actually does feel like a demarcation. Whereas the moon is finishing her transit of Cancer, she's going to make as of this morning, there's going to be a trine, right? 120-degree angle over to Neptune. And this is one of those spiritual breakthrough moments. And in fact, what it really does represent is the spiritual breakthrough of we all have our path to walk in accordance to the divine plan. Everybody is a unique seed unto the Great Spirit or God, and there's no such thing as unity in the sense that in this life cycle, we all come into a new seed point of creative potential, which is what the equinox really represented for all of us. Neptune is the great dissolver. Neptune is that solvent that comes along and takes away all of the boundaries of differentiation and returns you back to the source from where you came from, right? Back to surrendering, like that hanged man. So Neptune acts as the agent of taking away all of those boundaries in order to dissolve you back into it. But the thing about it is that you come back into a seed point of new creative potential. And that seed is already latent with all its power. It was created in the fruit that came in the Virgo time of the cycle, right? As the fruit is ripening and maturing, the seed is embedded in that fruit, and it has been dormant and waiting for its time. And so Neptune, as the agent of, dissolving everything, basically is bringing our awareness to this simultaneous experience of everything being washed away in many cases, and surrendering to the will of, well, it depends on what you are actually surrendering to. That is also part of the choice in some ways, is that what are you surrendering to? What do you acknowledge, or who do you acknowledge as your divine source or creative force? Because that's going to have a lot to do with what energy comes into this new seed point that is already viable with the equinox. So the trine with the moon in Cancer, it's one of those moments where we can really capitalize on the potentials of everything in a very personal realization. And it's not about being idly self-indulgent. It's about realizing our destiny. And this is with the moon in late Cancer, that we have full mastery of the experience from the inside to the outside. And when there's a trine to Neptune that's like, you know what, we're all going to kind of divide off into our own unique seed point, because that is the nature of being a seed unto the Great Spirit. And we may receive a very creative or spiritual breakthrough because our intuition is going to be really enhanced. Our imagination is going to be very sensitized. And this is this morning, right? 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So there's this moment here where we can, really manifest our genius personally in order to actually apply that to the welfare of humanity, right? We each have a role to play, and that doesn't mean that we are not all bound together in the Great Spirit, but we all have our role to play. And so we want to, maybe we need a little bit of relaxation. Maybe we need to kind of contain ourselves a little bit in those places that allow us to capitalize on our full potential. So the Sabian symbol with where the moon in Cancer is like guests are reading in the library of a luxurious home. So if you've ever been into a home that has their own library, yeah, it's very luxurious. Somebody that has the means and the resources to keep all of those books and have their own library is definitely something that seems self-indulgent. But it's not idle. It's actually taking advantage of these resources in order to manifest somebody's destiny in some way. So we all have our role to play. And it does feel like there's this moment here where the spiritual breakthrough can be profound this morning. And then what I'd like to share with you is that through the course of the morning into the afternoon, you're going to find that Saturn and Mars are getting closer and closer to their trine. You're going to see that Venus and Uranus are getting closer and closer to their exact conjunction. And the moon continues to move through its home territory of Cancer. And then what it's going to do as Mars, right before Mars and Saturn are exactly in their trine, which I explained already on Monday and certainly in the weekly astrology that's available to the membership, that this is one of those transits that basically, like I said, it gives you the ambition, the perseverance, and the drive to really tackle the hard tasks. And Mars in Cancer, I mean, we are definitely going to have our will tested, right? We're going to have that boundary of protection really tested. And Saturn, as difficult as it is in Pisces, it is also a matter of survival. Like there is this ability to tap into where everything has been and have a sense of absolute certainty in what we, in our ability to develop anything, right? We just have to be forewarned that we can't necessarily rely on things that we have not been personally contributing to, right? And Saturn doesn't pull any punches. Saturn doesn't have any wiggle room, right? Even in Pisces, Saturn is firm, it is fixed. Well, actually, it represents cardinal Earth, which is the unfolding of the law of nature, but it also rules Aquarius, which is very much a fixed energy. So there's the upside of Saturn in Pisces in this degree is the effective breadth of resource in all of our effort. It lets us know that we can develop absolute certainty in terms of our conscious knowledge, right? But we have to be active in the process. So there is something profoundly powerful about Mars in a trine to Saturn today happening that is going to give us this sense of, okay, I can handle this. Give me the test. I am ready to be tested and to have my ability to have absolute certainty in the divine will, into the path I'm following in terms of God's plan for me, however you identify that Pisces energy. So as this is happening, what I'm showing you on the screen now is the asteroids that the main asteroids that I bring into readings, which is Vesta, asteroid Vesta, Pallas Athena, Juno, and then Ceres, asteroid Ceres, which is actually a dwarf planet. And over here in retrograde back into Virgo. So Ceres is the goddess of agriculture and the grain. I mean, Virgo is her wheelhouse, right? And so she's come back into Virgo, and I feel like that we have this blessing right now to really internally continue to ripen, to exercise some sort of prudence and patience that it's not quite ready for the harvest yet. Okay, she kind of dipped into Libra a couple degrees in, and we got an idea of what to expect with that. And now she's come back into Virgo. And the moon, as this trine is happening, and as you can see here, Venus and Uranus coming together in Taurus, I mean, there is some sort of surprise around resources, material value, and wealth that is on the docket with this conjunction, it being exact, right? And with Uranus, it's always the awakening of higher consciousness, and Venus is at home in Taurus. So she is all about the comfort and security and harmony and beauty and value, right? She knows her own value when she's in Taurus because she is the living soil in many ways. She is the Empress in the tarot. And so meeting Uranus like this, even with the upset, in some ways, it actually brings to our awareness that that value, even if it changes, even if it goes through a dramatic change, even, maybe there's a surprise that shows up in terms of resource and value, whatever it is for you, it's likely going to be a surprise and something unexpected. And then you have Mars trine Saturn that's like, okay, give me the test. I am ready to actually act on the test. I want my will to be tested so I can act, right? That's what Mars wants to do. It's a warrior energy. And this degree of Venus and Uranus very much is the seeker turned warrior. And we're going to be kind of put in this position. And so right as this is happening, and the moon, right before it comes into Leo, which is where it's going to really change. I do feel like that in that moment when the moon is at 0 degrees Leo, opposite Pluto, this is going to be one of those moments of conflagration, right? We're going to just be like, poof, right? And it'll be an internal eruption. It will be our intuition or our feelings erupting in many ways in response to the destructive energy of Pluto in Aquarius. So before we get there, I want to share with you that the moon will be in a sextile to Ceres at this moment. And this is the thing that really stuck out to me about today. As this is happening, and as Mars comes into the trine with Saturn, Venus conjunct Uranus, and these are happening essentially at the same time later today in the afternoon, East Coast Standard Time. In the last degrees of Cancer, where the moon is, right? The intuitive weighing on alternatives. There's an inner presentation of alternatives that may be presented to us in terms of value and resource. And in fact, everything about this degree of 29 degrees Cancer is about value and the effectiveness of our judgment, irrespective of the momentary contradictions at hand. And where Venus and Uranus are representing those contradictions inside and outside, right? And the moon is really pulling us into, it is the inner intuitive weighing of these alternatives, our ability to sit under the Bodhi tree and actually feel it in our own intuition. And the sextile to Ceres, 60-degree angle, right? This is where you bring the two trinities together and they are able to activate and harmonize into an inner transformation. So this degree is about discovery. It is about seeking to realign yourself to the truth after some sort of crisis, okay? And there's a lot happening in our world right now, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be like this dramatic singular thing, but it very well could be. I think what it is doing is setting, we have this opportunity in this moment to discover within ourselves what is the truth. What is it that has real value to us, even if in that moment of Venus meeting Uranus, the entire concept of value is upended for us, and we may be really uncomfortable out in the outer world. We may be bombarded with all of this energy or all of these challenges, just like the Buddha under the Bodhi tree, right? Just like Jesus in the desert that was being tempted constantly for 40 days. I feel like that in this moment, this is where we get this opportunity to bring our imagination to the fullness of its power and our intuition through a conscious effort so that we really understand how we're going to realign ourselves with the truth. rather than lose all common sense and be so strongly impacted by the upheaval that we can't even bring ourselves back to center. Because what happens when the moon, then here, I'll go back to this chart here. When the moon does come into Leo, which is going to be coming into the evening on the East Coast here. So I'm looking at basically 6 to 7 p.m. East Coast time. So as we go through the day and the moon comes into Leo, it's going to be in an opposition to Pluto right away. So you see that the Mars trine Saturn is still active. It'll be active for the next day. So that energy is going to be very stabilizing and give us a lot of perseverance. Same thing with Venus and Uranus. I mean, she's now just on the other side of it, but that energy is still going to be very strong. But it's the moon opposite Pluto that really has my attention now, because as soon as that happens, there is a blood rushing to the head. There's an overwhelming potentiality with the moon in Leo. There's on one hand this emphasis on the continuity between being and doing, right? That these are seamless things, that we can't just be, but we can't just do either. We have to find the connection here internally, right? And we can be very creative in the way that we do this, but the opposition to Pluto is going to bring out all of these vulnerabilities, all of these feelings of hopelessness and obsession and jealousy. We become very vulnerable to being emotionally manipulated, okay? In many different ways, right? Either out there in the world, in our personal lives especially, and they're pushy people, they're dominating people that are going to find our weakness, essentially, and capitalize that for their own benefit. And you might find and tug on your emotions. So be ready for more of what's been happening, and maybe reaching almost a fever pitch in some ways today with the moon opposite Pluto. And remember, it's a moon transit. It will pass over the next, as the day unfolds. But also be aware how powerful it is that tugging on your emotions can make you feel fearful, make you feel guilty, and then that's how you're manipulated, right? And you may resort to manipulation to win some sort of emotional battle because other people can't get their feelings, they can't not act out of their own feelings. So our judgment becomes very clouded by an irrational mood. And when we're talking about the moon in Leo, I mean, this is the heart fire erupting. This is the Kundalini erupting into an ego, field of consciousness. That's the thing about Leo. It's, if you don't, the best case scenario is dramatic and the heart fire and your song and your creative expression that's a devotion to the divine. But if you haven't already given your ego over and allowed yourself to be a vessel for the divine to move through you, then Leo is conceit, it is narcissism, and it can be very destructive, just like the energy of radiation is really destructive without some sort of balancing mechanism. And you're either going to flower or blossom, but if you don't have a root system that is strong, then there ain't going to be no flowering or blossoming. And there could be just like a burn, right? And the opposite of Pluto, that's where all the manipulation comes in. That's where all of the feelings of possessiveness and fear and hopelessness come in. Because Pluto at 0 degrees Cancer is really giving us, 0 degrees Aquarius is giving us this, like I said, it's just dipping the toe into, this is the power that is going to be extracted ultimately from the collective voice, right? And we're talking about digital currency. We're talking about the internet of behaviors and bodies. We're talking about smart cities. We're talking about the social voice as a whole, right? We're talking about transhumanism. And in order to create, there must be destroyed. And this is going to be what we have with Pluto and Aquarius up until 2044. So this moment here is really crucial as we go into the end of today. And then just an hour or two after that, the moon will be in an inconjunct, actually, by the end of today. just coming into the 31st, right at midnight, basically, you're going to see that the moon is in an inconjunct with Saturn. And this is all another really difficult transit where you find yourself fear and guilt. There's going to be a lot of fear. There's going to be a lot of guilt. There's a lot of hopelessness. And it makes it difficult to maintain harmony in your intimate relationships because there's stress, there's loneliness, there's misunderstanding, there's emotional manipulation that then creates a distance and makes a coldness in your relationships that makes it very difficult to have harmonious balance in that way. And there's this, and with the moon in Leo again, there's this strong sense of independence. Like, no, I'm going to be me no matter what. And the imbalance comes from having an imbalance between your own emotions and then Saturn, which is your responsibility, right? Your professional life, or your responsibility to your family unit, or your responsibility to your society. And your own needs, your own emotional needs, which is definitely the moon in Leo, it's definitely going to be like my needs, right? And emotional needs. And Saturn in Pisces, it's just like there is no getting out of the collective, the fullness of the collective unconscious and the karma that comes along with it, right? And so you may feel frustrated because it becomes more difficult to share your feelings, right? So the best use of this transit, by the time we get to the end of the end of Thursday, maybe it's late night, maybe it's into Friday for you, wherever you are, is forgiveness, especially when we're going to talk about Saturn in Pisces, right? Forgiveness, forgiving yourself, having a sense of forgiveness and compassion at the societal or spiritual level, having a sense of loyalty and trust and patience, right? Because the moon in Leo is not patient at all. The moon in Leo is just like, it's all about me, right? And that's how you feel, and you're going to have that strong emotion, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's the inconjunct with Saturn that's going to make it very difficult to maintain the harmony with the feels of the societal karma and the intensity of our responsibility being part of where we are right now. And this could also be in your family as well, or in your relationship. So forgiveness, compassion, right? I mean, this is a great opportunity to just actually pray or find a meditative space and really get into a space where you can, you have to adjust yourself with a quincunx. There's no way around that. So if you try to stabilize yourself just in your own emotions, you're not going to take advantage of the opportunity to actually make the adjustment, which is where you transmute the energy, right? You have this, you square the circle, and then you transmute something, and you make things fit together that don't seem like they fit together. And that's really difficult. Like, there's no doubt about that. So I wanted to come on here and just draw attention to the fact that there is clearly some sort of emotional demarcation today with these transits that are important to at least be aware of as we start our day. That in the beginning of the day, as the moon finishes her transit of Cancer and is very powerful here and sensitive and intuitive and wanting to protect what's vulnerable and tap into our intuition, that there are opportunities. There are opportunities for breakthrough. There are opportunities to tap in and trust our intuition, to see that after a crisis, we have the capacity on the inside to tap back into what the truth is. And this is part of the maturation of, the fruit ripening. We're not quite there yet. Ceres has gone back into the sign of that she represents, essentially, which is the ripening of the fruit, the ripening of the grain. And it's internalized, right? And so we go back to that hermit that was at the center of our reading on Monday, right? There's a tendency to either go so deep within that you're isolating and kind of bypassing, but there's also a need to go back into this space. We've been so patient and prudent, and we need to continue to do so, because there is transformation. And that death card, it's coming, right? The harvest is truly on its way. And we're in kind of the middle of it right now. And we want to be able to maintain our harmony and our calmness in the storm. And that's going to be, the full moon is going to give us a full revelation. Have we created the structures that allow us to receive that quite consciously? Or are we going to have to let go of, and we won't even have to let go. It will be forced out of our lives if we have not created the new structures that allow for that full moon revelation to enter our lives, which is about the calmness and the ability to have a sense of stability as everything kind of rages around us, because we were already involved in that at one point. So thank you for listening, and I appreciate everyone out there doing their best. So if you're interested in any services, of course, you just go to my website. Like I said, I'm going to keep this forecast sale open until at least we get to the full moon. So if you're considering it, you might want to book it now so I can still get to you. And of course, I'm going to put out the Libra full moon forecast very soon. So those of you who are Libra people have an insight into how this full moon is going to affect you directly and what to expect for the next 2 weeks. So thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much. And I will see you on the next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye.